Has Kansas City made your short list of places you're considering relocating to? Well, if so, stay tuned because I'm going to share with you the top 7 reasons that you might want to actually reconsider. You see, I've lived here for more than 40 years. I've helped more than 500 people move to or within the Kansas City area, and I'm going to give you the short list of what really sucks about living in Kansas City. If you're thinking of moving to Kansas City, go ahead, hit that button and ring that bell. That way you're notified every time one of these new videos comes out. We've helped hundreds of people move to or within the Kansas City area, and we would love to help you too. So give us a call at 816-439-8705 or email us at team@plainsparis.com. Just remember, when it comes to moving to Kansas City, all you have to do when you work with us is point the direction and we'll guide you there. All right, let's break into it. They say that every man owes a death and every man owes taxes. So let's just go ahead and get taxes out of the way. So the first thing I want to talk about is real estate property taxes in Kansas City. So again, $500,000 is a very common price point when somebody's relocating to Kansas City, especially if they're coming from the coast to moving any sort of equity. So let's just take a $500,000 price point. Let's compare county to county. Now the Kansas City area has about 5 major counties that make up the main metro. We're not going to talk about all the outlying counties. We're going to talk about Johnson County, Wyandotte County on the Kansas side, Platte County, Clay County, and Jackson County on the Missouri side. First off, let's start with the most expensive, and this will actually surprise most people in Kansas City because they would assume that Johnson County area would actually have the highest taxes, but actually is Wyandotte County. So for $500,000, if you were buying a property at $500,000, your taxes you could expect to pay are going to be about $9,050 per year. That's because Wyandotte has a lower tax base, but they still have to provide a lot of services to a lot of people. So you will find that there's higher taxes per dollar there. Now, coming in at number 2, still on the Kansas side, is going to be Johnson County. Now, Johnson County comes in at $6,900 on a $500,000 property. So it's quite a bit less, but it's the second most expensive county in the entire city. Now, living in Johnson County, even though it's more expensive, they have a great tax base. Houses there are very expensive, or very valuable at least, and they have a lot of business, which means they're bringing a lot of opportunity for taxes at least coming in, and that allows them to provide a lot of services. So if you go into Johnson County, you're going to see a remarkable difference in how manicured everything there is, how maintained the streets are, the street lights, all the parkways and so forth. But then when you look at the county and you look at the services that they provide, you're going to see there's a lot of services for mental health or senior care, those types of things that you won't find as prevalent in other counties. You're going to find the other counties are a little more stripped down and bare bones, while Johnson County is going to provide the most amount for its citizens. Okay, so let's switch over to the Missouri side, and the most expensive one on the Missouri side is going to be Jackson County. So a $500,000 home in Jackson County is going to be $7,150. That again is because they have a large population and the tax base is kind of a mix there. As you go closer to the state line, it's going to be a lower value homes, and then it's going to get more expensive as you get to the state line. But everybody's paying for services in the county, so it does increase costs, and you will find the taxes there are slightly more expensive than the other 2 counties on the Missouri side. On the north of the river side, we've got Clay and Platte County. So Clay is going to be a little bit more expensive than Platte County. A $500,000 house in Clay County is going to be $6,050, while a $500,000 house in Platte County is only going to be $5,750. Now, one thing you have to know about living in Kansas City or even working in Kansas City is there is a 1% earnings tax that applies to anybody that works or lives in Kansas City. So that's kind of a pain in the butt. They've had different tax initiatives where they've tried to remove that, but of course, if they remove it, they'll have to make it up somewhere because it costs money to run the city. Now, one other thing that you have to know is it's not uncommon for somebody to live in Missouri and work in Kansas. So what happens when it comes to taxes there? Well, you do pay income tax in both states. Now, what you need to know about that though is if you live in Missouri and you paid income tax to Kansas, now that income tax is a write-off when it comes to filing your Missouri return. Now, if you get online, you will see that there will be conversations about how Missouri has higher taxes than other areas, and they're talking specifically about property tax. Now, if we look at income tax, Missouri is actually significantly lower, especially compared to states like California, New York, and Florida. I like to just say that in Missouri, we're taxed more on what we spend and what we own and less on what we earn. You gotta kind of take it with a grain of salt and really make sure you're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. It's really easy to pick out one thing and it doesn't tell the whole story. It's like going to Oregon and saying there's no sales tax. So the idea that you're gonna never pay sales tax, it's really not true. You're just gonna hire something else to make up for it because the government has to make a certain amount of money to pay for all the services that we expect them to provide. Now, if staying healthy is important to you, you're gonna have a little bit of a harder time in Kansas City. In fact, in our city, 30.7% of our population is actually obese. We are 44th in the nation, and it's really because healthy food options are not prevalent. Things are definitely getting better than when I was a kid, but you're still gonna come to Kansas City. You're gonna find that when you order food, it's gonna be large portions and often a lot of carbs. The most successful dieters that I know, they really have to meal prep because most places that you're gonna go out and eat, again, it's gonna be hamburgers and French fries or, that type of stuff. Every menu generally has some healthy options on there, but when I go travel on the West Coast, almost the entire menu is a healthy option at a lot of restaurants, where here it's gonna be this little, spot in the corner, salmon, chicken, and rice type of stuff. Now, there are some restaurants that specialize in healthy eating. Protein House down in Power and Light, Fuel Cafe in the Northland are two examples, two places that I really like. But keep in mind that it is abnormal to eat out and eat healthy when it comes to living in Kansas City. Now, compounding a lack of healthy options, there's also a lack of outdoor recreational activities. You gotta know that when you move to Kansas City, there's no mountains and no oceans. That should be no surprise if you've looked at a map. But Kansas City is relatively flat. We're right on the edge of the plains, right on the edge of the Midwest, which means that there's just not a lot of terrain. So when it comes to mountain biking or hiking, it's really gonna be limited here. There are some places you can find. I like going up to Weston Bend, north of Platte City. They've got a great view over a bluff up there. Then there's other ones, there's Parma and so forth. But by and large, if you're used to being near mountains, what we call a mountain, you would call a hill. So just keep that in mind. Now, we do have the Missouri River. Yes, it's a feature, but really nobody goes there. In fact, Missouri River means muddy river in Indian. Just imagine Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and that chocolate river. That's basically what the Missouri River looks like. The only people I know that use it are fishermen. Outside of that, you will see that along the river market area, they are putting some trails in. So you're gonna see maybe more running and jogging along the river, but an actual use of the river is really not something that we do here in the city. Now, one of the toughest things about moving to Kansas City is identifying the right spot in the city for you to live, and you'll find quickly that you can be overwhelmed when you realize that a 20-minute commute really gives you a 20-mile radius. So lots and lots of choices, and it's easy to start second guessing yourself. Now, we've helped hundreds of people go through the same process, and we've identified some metrics that are gonna help us identify the perfect spot in Kansas City for you. In fact, we've went ahead and built a quiz that in just 10 questions will tell you where you should live in Kansas City based on your personality and based on what you like to do when you're not at work. So remember, this is a city where you can choose to live where you love, and you don't have to live where you work. So we've provided that for you, the link's down below. And also know that any home that you buy with Plains Paris is guaranteed for 6 months. If you find for any reason that you're not happy with the home that you bought, we will gladly relist that property and give you a do-over. So reach out, we'll give you the details on that. Let's get back to it. Some of the best things that we do outside are going to be pickleball. Again, a lot of the bars are starting to pop up pickleball courts. There's some other spots in town, but again, by and large, it's not going to be what you're used to when you're coming from a place like Portland or Denver, or even, any of the coasts where you're close to a beach. Now, Kansas City is built on transportation. We originally were a port on the river, then we had the railroad, and then we had all the highways. But when it comes to public transportation, it's really lacking here. So bus routes do exist and they go all over the city. However, they're pretty lacking when you get into the suburbs. So if you were in the suburb and you wanted to use a bus, you're still driving a car to the bus stop, parking somewhere and commuting from there. Now there's more bus routes in the urban core, but again, most people don't live in the urban core. They're gonna live out in suburbs. It is expanding, but it's not prevalent for us to be using buses for transportation. Now, walkability here is pretty poor as well. Most of our suburbs are broke out into big subdivisions. So like I can walk to a grocery store where I'm at, but it's going to be a 30-minute walk there and a 30-minute walk back carrying bags, so I'm never going to do that. We drive pretty much everywhere we go. Now, there is a Kansas City streetcar, but it is not like streetcars in other cities. It's really a tourist line. People do use it for other things, but by and large, it runs right down the tourist route. It's great for going out and having drinks, hopping on there and going down and having dinner, that type of stuff. It runs from River Market down to Union Hill right now. It's expected to expand, so it's something I would recommend keeping an eye on if I were wanting to be in a busy part of the city where I could have some sort of walkability. Being near it is a very big benefit, and then buying where we think it's going is going to make a great investment. So everywhere that streetcar has gone, we've seen development and we've seen prices go up all around it. So I would expect that to continue, and they're going to continue expanding that further south and further north. Kansas City just opened a brand new international airport, so let's talk about that a little bit. Now, number one, the first thing you have to know is that we call it KCI, but if you're not from here, you're going to call it MCI. Basically, back in the 1950s, TWA had a hub here. They had a repairs facility, at least, which had a runway, and they named that the Mid-Continent International Airport, MCI. So we've kept that designation even when they built KCI in the 60s. When it comes to international travel, though, it's kind of misleading. We do not have a lot of international travel, even though KCI International, MCI International is in our name. Right now, we only have direct flights internationally to Cancun, Cabo seasonally, Toronto, and they just opened up Montego Bay, Jamaica. Now, you have to know that Missouri and Kansas are all bidding right now to buy more international flights. They want to bring more travel into the city, so having layovers in the city is going to be a benefit. Plus, if they have those types of flights, they're able to attract more conventions. So I would expect that there's going to be a lot more development around that airport. We're already starting to see it, but we should see a lot more of that development because we expect more attention to be given to that part of the city. Now, if I were moving to a new city, my safety would be a top concern. So let's talk about Kansas City's crime rate. The FBI put Kansas City as number 8 on their top 10 most violent cities report, and we actually were 5th in total homicide rate. So take that with a grain of salt, though. That study really only factored the 319 miles that made up Kansas City proper and ignored the 8,472 miles that made up the Kansas City metro. Cities like Chicago and San Francisco didn't even make the list, and that's because their city has really annexed all of their districts as it's expanded. Kansas City has done a little bit of annexation, but cities like Overland Park, Olathe, Independence, Grandview, Raytown, Parkville, Liberty, etc., those cities were not even included, even though that's where a majority of the people in Kansas City actually live. When people visit Kansas City, they're often excited that we get all 4 of the seasons. It does make beautiful postcards, but it can actually make living in Kansas City really suck. In the summer, temperatures easily get to 100 degrees and we'll have 100% humidity often at those same times. In the winter, a high of 34 is our average, but you'll often have weeks where the highs are only in the teens, and it's not uncommon to have certain cold fronts come through where the high might not even get to 0. Keep that in mind. We have lots of freezing rain and snow at times, and in the summer, again, it's hot. People are often racing from their car to the building, from building to building, air conditioner to air conditioner, avoiding that heat. So hanging out on a patio can actually be uncomfortable many times of the year. Yes, we have them. Yes, people use them, but it's going to be certain times of the evening, certain times of the year where those are going to be more popular. We're known for having tornadoes, but we really haven't had that many tornadoes recently. In fact, most tornadoes have came across the southern parts of the country. I haven't seen a tornado come through our area in 10 or 12 years. Yes, they occur, but they're not really as prevalent as they're made out to be. So global warming in Kansas City, we are the 5th most vulnerable city in the country, says the Weather Channel. And I would assume the Weather Channel are weather experts, but I couldn't tell you any more about it. So definitely look that article up if that's a concern for you. But one thing about global warming that is changing our area is we have a lot more wind now. The jet stream that comes through Kansas City has changed recently, but they are expecting that to actually become the opposite, where it's going to be less than average wind in the next decade. Well, these are the things that I find to be the most uncomfortable parts of living in Kansas City. So you might really weigh that, and if you can't stomach it, maybe moving to Kansas City isn't the right choice for you. If there's anything that you think we've missed, go ahead and add it down below. We'll make sure we get that in the next video. Go ahead and hit that button and ring that bell. That way you're notified when we do one of these videos. And again, if you're even thinking about moving to Kansas City, reach out to us immediately at 816-439-8705. Call, text, email, whatever's best for you. Just remember, when it comes to moving to Kansas City, that we're here, and all you have to do is point the direction, and we'll guide you there.